Hi, I'm Dina Dellery. I'm from Bonner Springs. I'm the tech coach. They have a really cool name. It's called Innovative Technology Integrationist. I can't even say it because it's so unique, I guess. But that just means that I help students and teachers be able to integrate technology effectively in the classroom. And that also means that, I help when technology doesn't work. So a little bit about me. I'm going to point it over to Krista.
Hi, I'm Krista Hardy, and I am at Canyon Creek Elementary, and I do I'm in the Idea Lab, and my title is actually Instructional Technology Specialist. But basically, I am in place of computer. I'm a special, so as a certified person, but we do coding. Oh my gosh, I'm blank. Makerspace and STEM challenges, and it's an hour-long special. So. And I love my job. I guess Melissa.
I'm Melissa Davies. I teach 5th grade at Tomahawk Elementary in Olathe. And I implement technology as much as I can in my classroom and use it all the time. Oh, Nikki.
Sorry, I wasn't unmuted. I'm Nikki. I'm a middle school librarian in DeSoto, and this is our first year of going one-to-one at our building. And so it's been a learning process for everyone, and there really wasn't any training for me in the library or really anyone on, hey, here's the best way to do it. Here's what you should do. So I'm still trying to make it better next year as we get those new 6th graders coming in, how we can teach them right from the beginning, some of the most important things, and then build on it throughout the year. And I will send it to Lori.
Hey, good morning. I'm Lori Hauer. I am the technology integration coach from Ottawa High School. And Dina and I are both Google certified trainers. So we connect all the time. And I'm super excited to always learn with her. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Dina.
And I just want to mention, we also know her as the crazy bus lady. We'll let her talk about that later. Send it over to Mrs. Greenfield.
Hi, I'm Lori Greenfield from Lawrence, and I teach 2nd grade. And my our librarians do digital citizenship, and so just wanted to learn a little bit more. So
awesome. So I'll go ahead and get started. So I do have a little presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but this is not really part of what we're going to do today. It's not you listening to me unless we want to jump back and forth. And so kind of my basis and when I work with my teachers is, when they ever hear internet safety and digital citizenship, especially if it's in 2nd grade, they're just like blah, blah, blah. I mean, they have so much to do. It's just like one more thing on their plate. So I have to think of ways to make it easy for them. Here's that Backchannel Chat that I was talking about. I'm actually using a Wakelet. So let me put that back. It was bit.ly/EdCamp and the capitalization is important. So it's a Wakelet that just allows you to share resources. Even if you want to type a note, like you've got an idea, but you don't have like a resource built for it, it's just a good place for you to put ideas. I had someone on the Flipgrid yesterday that talked about how they use Twitter, and I think she was teaching kindergarten. I can't remember exactly, but she had a great idea, but she didn't have like a special resource about it. It was just her idea. So I'm going to go over to that Wakelet. The big thing about this is you're in basically edit mode at this point when you click on that link. So you can add stuff there, but you just click on the plus sign. And even if it's just you want to add text to it because you've got a great idea that you want to add, but you don't have a formal thing for it or a website, you can just type something in there. It has a few editing details, and then you can click save. And the big deal that you got to remember when you get done with your part that you add is you click up here where it says publish and exit, because if you don't, it doesn't save what you're doing. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping as we get going. If you've got a great idea, I know I said save and exit, but they changed the rules. It's now save and publish. So sorry about that. I didn't update my slide. The other thing that I've kind of taken just when I think about librarians or anybody's classroom is our kids we've talked to kids to death about the do's and don'ts of, of social media or anything that they're doing digitally, about their digital footprint. And they know what the do's and don'ts are a lot of the time, but they don't listen to us because it's kind of like drinking and driving sometimes. Unless it has an impact on you, we're at that age where their brains aren't fully developed, and it doesn't happen to them. So I think that we need to, as teachers, we thought this was a genius idea, but our kids are really like this. They're not listening. So we got to change it up. And so I've kind of, after actually this year going to Texas to TCEA, just kind of changed a little bit of my thinking, just because I think we need to change the way we're doing things. And I went to some training on it. And it's just like, how are you using, and this is to your students, using technology every day to make a real difference for your community, your kids, and the world? And so we got to think about, we need to shift our conversation to one of fear and negativity, like don't do this, to one of empathy and just what are some things we should be doing, and how do we incorporate that in our classroom? And so that's kind of, they have this book that I've been reading a lot, and I used to go with Mike Rubble and his 9 competencies here in, he's from Manhattan, but I like this one a little bit better. It's geared towards the student. And I talk about, the 5 different things that this book really talks about. And it really points the kid on the things that they should be doing. Let's start doing this now. And, it still has things like, I want to be aware of my online actions alert, and talking about some of the things to do appropriately, but it has them engaged while they're doing this. So that's kind of how I started that Flipgrid topic. How do you incorporate digital citizenship and internet safety in your classroom? And I kind of just stopped there because, I want to hear some of the great ideas you might be doing, or we can just share back and forth that way. So really, I don't want to have you all sitting there muted. Let's unmute and just stop here and talk, and we can all pop in and share ideas.
Hey, Dina, it's Lori.
Yes.
Hey, one thing that I do in the high school, and I'm often asked by other teachers to come in and share, and that's kind of the more higher level awareness of copyrights and what that looks like, what's a copyright infringement, and how they need to learn citations and the value of doing that, along with discussions of, like, if you create something, how would you kind of bring it back to them. So that's not unusual. And interestingly enough, that came across from when we first went one-to-one. Some of our staff were finding electronic PDFs of textbooks which were copyright infringements. So it's really far-reaching in how you can have those discussions and help kids understand that they can't just take anything they want for themselves. That really is some financial and civic responsibility to observe. So that's kind of where we're at with the high school level.
I think that's interesting that you said that, because I just had an opportunity to do like a 10-minute presentation in an ELA content meeting, and I did it for all my content classes as well. And I just showed them in Google Docs, Google Slides, how easy it was to pull stuff in and cite it. And I showed them the hack where it actually adds it as a footnote for, APA or MLA, depending on what they're using. And you can just copy and paste that footnote into your citation page or your resource page. And teachers are like, I'm in master's classes right now. Like, how did I not know that? So just simple tips like that. And for those of you sitting there like, what is that? Those are things that are just easy if you're a Google school to show them, to make life easier for students, because back in the day we had to memorize all of that stuff, like if it came from a book or it came from a video or whatever. And while I think it's important for students to know the basics of that, the reality is when they get out of your class, they're using every resource imaginable to get that correct. And so we might as well show them how to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And then also, just there's so many tools out there that, like you just said, didn't exist when we were in school, or, my first couple degrees. Anyway, Adobe Spark, when you use the photos in their provided library, it automatically adds the citation for the students. So it's just that other level that sometimes slips their minds, but yet is just a best practice that they can start to learn. So.
Another thing along that line is I get kids are like, I did something really great in social studies, well, and I see it and I'm like, can I use this on social media to just brag about what we're doing? And then I always ask the question, are these images on here ones that you have permission to use? Or, and then I get the big eyes like, oh no, it's not. And I'm like, well, I can't put that on, I can't put that on our social media because that's, copyright infringement when I do that. So having those conversations as well. Nikki, I saw that you were unmuted. Did you want to grab the conversation and give us an idea?
Oh no, sorry. My dog was up moving around. I didn't want you guys to hear. No, like I said, I'm really trying to find some ways that I can do a better job of this next year, because a lot of things were just thrown in my lap at the beginning of the year. And, in addition to running the library, trying to figure out, how to do this. Our computers teacher does a great job with it, but not all of our kids have computers class. So trying to find some ways to not do what she's doing, but maybe do some different things in the library. And she and I have worked together a little bit, but it's just something I'm trying to work towards for next year.
So I just pulled up a slide, and I'll give anyone share rights that wants it. But this is kind of what I start with is, okay, how can I think about helping teachers in the classroom utilize some of the social media aspects with their students to be able to create an authentic audience, to practice better behaviors. And one of them that I really like, it's been around since 2008, it's a student blogging challenge, and students can participate, entire classes can participate. And it's been around, and it's for 8 weeks. So it started I think March 15th, but you can jump in there, and it's geared for ages, age 8 to 16. So if you're above that age, like maybe 17 or 18-year-old, you can actually be like an adult. So you're actually giving feedback and helping students create that authentic audience so that you can still participate, but you're not necessarily doing some of the challenges as far as writing and stuff in that nature. And the questions are going to be provided. It's not like geared around what you're reading or something, but it gives a student, practice of the writing skills and, building good digital citizenship skills while they're doing that. One of them that I discovered in Texas, I didn't even know, it's been around for a while. You guys might know about it, but it's called Go Bubble. And it's an entire social media platform for students that are not old enough to be on social media. And it's kind of built a little bit, it reminds me of Google Classroom, because you do have some control of how to build your class and what rules or what things you allow. So that's something to really look into, because you could be asking your students, questions. One thing I don't like in Google Classroom is if I submit an assignment as a student, nobody else sees that, so I love when I'm in my college classes and they're using Google Plus. And if I submit an assignment, somebody can see that, and maybe it's just the one thing they needed to help going on their assignment, or because I do that as well. Like, I'm stumped on this one assignment, so I'll go look at someone's that completed it, and that kind of gets me in gear to get my butt started on what we should do. So that's one that I would really look at. It's go.bubble. And then Tara Martin, of course, has coined book snaps to be able to have kids express what they know. But most of our kids aren't old enough to be on Snapchat. So, there's tons of templates out there to use this in Google Slides. And again, allowing students in Google Slides to make comments on different things that are going on just helps get kids engaged and talking to each other and hashing stuff out. And, you know, you've got to set rules and expectations of what you allow for that. And then you might have to remove an expectation from one student that you need to pull aside and have a conversation with. But that's how kids learn. Like, you know, their brains are forming. And if we're not helping them here, guaranteed parents at home don't have time for that. Anybody, did that help start some conversations for someone?
I like the blogging idea. I'm wondering if that's something I could maybe share with our teachers, and maybe they could find a way to get that started, since we're, you know, everybody's doing online learning right now.
Well, and one thing I put in there, because I thought I saw that Lori was taking pictures, is I do have this presentation in that Wakelet. So, you know, you can pull this up, click on those links, and be part of that.
Okay, great.
And if you guys are using like Seesaw, I'll talk about Seesaw here in a minute if you want me to, but Google Classroom, like I'm the teacher that allows kids to post and comment. Now I set the expectation that it has to be school related, you know, so I don't want anything on there like, you know, my birthday party's on Saturday at 2 o'clock. But if you want to announce like, hey, Stuco's having XYZ going on, I don't care, because the stream is separated from my classwork anyway, so go for it. And then I always have them in the classwork side of things when I'm posting assignments or material, that I want them to use that as their Ask 3 before me. Like, post questions there, you know, have other students answer it. Like, I'm not managing that. That's what students are managing. So I'm not really looking at the Q&A in a classroom assignment. If you have that, you can private chat me that. But that's where students can kind of virtually help each other out. And I allow that. I kind of monitor it just for behavior practices. But beyond that, you know, it's another way for kids to communicate and to build that social media skill without being on social media. But, you know, Google Classroom's one for that. I also like to use social media things that kids are interested in, even though in middle school, most of them shouldn't be on, you know, social media, but they are. Like, there's tons of templates out there for Instagram stories or Snapchat games. And again, those are, I've seen a lot of them in Google Slides is how they're using it. But don't forget that students can comment on those, you know, within Google Slides, you know, give them a purpose of actually using comments for, you know, a good thing. Make it part of your assignment and expectation. I'm just going to keep flipping through them because I wanted to get to Nikki, because I know you're in elementary, and I can't remember. I think Mrs. Greenfield as well. I need to delete one of these off of here because I have this posted in the Flipgrid. Androidify was so much fun, but they took it down, so I have to delete this from here. But I used Androidify because it was like building your own Android character versus kind of like Bitmoji type of thing. And kids could do it even under the age of 13 because they could download it to their Chromebook. They couldn't save it because, you know, that we don't allow that because they're not old enough. But they could download it, and then they could take that Android character like into Google Draw or to Google Slides, and we could tie that into our content area, maybe on a book we're reading, or maybe because I had students creating scenes in Google Slides with their Android character based on something they were reading. And so some little app smashing there, and then they would actually post that into Seesaw, and students would use the Oreo cookie lesson that I did with them to make comments on that. And I set parameters on what the expectation was as far as commenting. And I actually brought Oreo cookies to school. I did this with grades 3 through 5. And I talked about that when we're commenting on someone's project that's in Seesaw, you know, we start out with a positive comment. The constructive comment, which is that filling, is based on what my expectation was for the assignment. So you can't say, hey, I don't really like XYZ. That's not a constructive help to help your significant peer do better. It has to be like, hey, you know, part of the assignment says we were supposed to. I might recommend that you, and so I gave them prompts of how to do that. so that they had something that they could start with for those of them that had a hard time doing that. And then they had to end with a positive comment, and they had to do that with at least 2 classmates. And so that helped them practice good digital citizenship skills, plus their writing. You know, they had to do some thinking and some problem solving on how to help their, you know, their significant other. So that was something I did in elementary that I like to do a lot. And then Snappables, I did one in history, but it could be used for anything. Like Snapchat has a game called This or That. And then students use the comment section to be able to agree or disagree with what you chose. Like I chose this over that. And then the students, and they had to say why they chose that. And the students would use the comment section to say, yeah, I agree with that, or no, I don't agree with that. Would this be posted to EdCamp board as far as my presentation? Mrs. Greenfield? Yes, it is. It's actually on that, if you, in the resource section by my presentation, it has the Backchannel Chat, and so it's posted right there. Perfect. Okay. I've maybe started some conversation there. Anybody have any feedback, thoughts? I mean, what are you thinking?
I like all these ideas. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I like all these ideas. I'm just trying to process through my brain how to tie it into something in the library, because they don't all read the same book necessarily, unless I guess I could try to do it with a classroom novel. If they're doing a classroom novel, we could maybe tie it into something to try in the library. It's definitely food for thought.
So Nikki, here's my thought for you, because they all are reading different things. So what we've done in our library is we created a Flipgrid that the librarian put in, because we have like Google Classrooms for all of, you know, 6th grade, all of 7th grade, all of 8th grade. So however you share that out with kids, you determine that. But she created a Flipgrid, and it was called Book Trails. And students just gave feedback on the books that they were reading that would make recommendations for other students to use. And then students could make comments back and forth on, well, I didn't really like the plot, or they could have a conversation, and we set some parameters. So during library time, she set some parameters, what was allowed. And she didn't allow things to be posted unless she had monitored that. She started that at the beginning, and then kids were so excited about doing it, became overwhelming. And she's like, I just got to let it go. Like, if someone finds something inappropriate, let me know. But the one thing that she did is she took the QR codes from some of the best ones that she thought, you know, were made, and she put those on display with the book. She put the QR code there, and the kids could go around with their Chromebooks. We don't have iPads, and we don't allow them to have their phones, but they brought their Chromebooks to library, and they could actually watch a book trailer about that through that Flipgrid, or they could do it on their own time and just watch, you know, the topics within Flipgrid as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry. My dogs are barking at each other, and I'm trying to deal with them and listen to this at the same time. So I'm sorry. I'm going to mute it just so you don't have to listen to the barking.
Do you think that would work for your age level?
I think it could, definitely. I think I could find a way to make that work.
If you need some help, holler at me. I'd love to troubleshoot that with you.
Okay, perfect.
I was just going to say it's a lot of great ideas. And I guess makes me think a little bit more of how I could possibly incorporate some of it in some type of way, but I just need some more thinking time, I guess, on that, just because I don't have them very long. You know what I mean? As far as, and we're pretty busy the whole time we're there, but there might be a way that this could be an extension that even through the classroom.
Or collaborating, that it's kind of a dual
Right.
project with classroom.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. But lots of great ideas I hadn't thought about.
So this was more geared towards kind of, Lori, some of your level. Nikki, what was your level again? Or excuse me, not Nikki, but Mrs. Greenfield, what grade level? Second grade. Okay, perfect. This is one more that might be more pertaining towards Lori, but Lori, I know that Dean probably does a lot with this at your grade level, but I just send my kids to, we do this in middle school too, but it might be fun to share with your staff as librarians or the second grade teacher. But if you guys haven't seen this, click on that link there. And it's basically Google has created a phishing test, and it's like 8 questions. And it's fun to see how you rate or how good you are at preventing yourself from harm. So I do this with middle school kids too. A lot of them haven't seen it, which I think is funny. But you take the quiz, and I always tell people that you can put in Mickey Mouse here, and you can make up some email that's not true, because that's not a true email, because they're not checking for this. So you could make up whatever you wanted if you're afraid that they're collecting, real information. But it just takes you through this quiz, and as you're collecting on phishing or legitimate, they're going to tell you where you made a mistake, and it will say show me. And so it can kind of take your staff and your kids through how to better protect themselves and not be victims to a phishing attack or a phishing email. So that one is kind of fun. And then if you're really getting excited about it, there is a more advanced one here on examples of phishing, or excuse me, that's an article. Let me go back. Over here on the SMART, they have even a more advanced one if you want to give that to your staff or your students and just see how things are going. So those are not necessarily library things per se, but more like, hey, with my staff, or if you have older students. And then this one I always find is super fun for kids that, and for adults. This one usually the grade school teachers are now listening because this pertains more to them, of making sure what kind of information you're giving up to the world about your location. And I usually pull my phone up and demonstrate how much on my phone I didn't realize I was giving up for location. Like there's tons of apps on my phone that don't need to know where I'm at to give me good information. So these are just conversation starters to have, or just, hey, if you haven't checked on this yourself, it's a good one to look at. This one, as far as privacy, I talk more, this is a fun starter that I like to have with even my kids. Like, should you create an email account that does not have your name and the address for social media accounts? And there's no right or wrong answers, but it's fun for and I'm not running through Pear Deck right now, so you can't answer. But this one's kind of a passion of mine, because I gave this to my now 30-year-old daughter on what she thought her response was. And she's like, it doesn't matter. She goes, I have privacy set up. I've got a strong password, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hack your account, and I'm gonna go to YouTube because there's somebody out there that knows how to do this better than I do. And within 12 minutes, watching the YouTube video and hacking her account, I posted on her social media account that Dina Dellery is the best mother in the world. And she was like, all right, how did you do that? Like, I'm like, because you used jessicad@gmail.com, and that told me a lot of information about you. So using your name in a social media account, I love the kids that use their school's account because their school account is their first and last name. It's easy to hack those accounts. And then it comes to the, well, should we have different accounts for different passwords for each account? And I love the teachers that show their black book of how many pages of actual passwords they have to remember, and then it changes. And or I have an app on my iPhone that keeps that for me. So then when you change iPhones, by the way, that doesn't go with you. So you have to start that process all over again. So I've been passionate about using something that Google has taken off with, and that's creating complex passwords that you don't have to write down, and how to manage that. And so there's a presentation I'm thinking of even in the library that could be beneficial to really get kids started. I start this in 4th grade, and I do this with kids all the way till their senior year. And my my goal is to get them to have this as a habit, because the first time they do it, they have to write it down. It's not a habit. It's not normal for them. But by the time they get to be a senior, they're in a habit when all of a sudden they're going to have tons of passwords to remember, bank accounts, college stuff, you know, all that stuff we have as an adult. This gets them to a better system of creating passwords that they don't have to write down. And it's all about passphrases that are that you make up yourself, that have meaning to you. And you know, there is ways to create different passwords for different things, because the passphrase just changes a little bit. And I'm telling you, if you practice this as an adult, it seems really weird at the beginning. I no longer write passwords down, and I no longer use Trixie32 with the X being an explanation point for all my passwords, which was the name of my horse and the age that I started passwords. And I just changed the age when I had to. I mean, that's not a good password, even though as a special character, it's got numbers, it's got a capital letter, that's easily guessed. You know, and the best thing is two-step verification, but not all of our kids have a phone, so they can't always do that. I'm going to stop. Anybody have any thoughts about privacy tips, or those of you that are younger? It's a fun exercise even to do with younger kids, just because there's some other thought process and problem solving that goes into it. And so it's just about, you know, creating strong passwords. And again, the example that I use with kids is there was a teacher that taught at Oakley, and her name was Kristen. So I met Kristen in Hawaii around 1989. And then you're just taking parts of every one of those words and that phrase to make a really good password, which you get down to here at the end. And that's hard to guess, but that passphrase is easy for me to remember because it means something to me. So getting kids to create sentences, you know, in those younger grades, and then creating this really unique passwords. We even would have contests, and I could see librarians doing this, where it's the best password. Like that's the hardest password to guess. And kids get really excited about, you know, they've got to use some writing skills. They got to do some thinking of something that's important to them. You know, like what's really important to you. So I always explain to kids how I came up with this passphrase. Kristen is somebody that I just met, and I really like her, so I can remember her name. Hawaii is on my bucket list to go visit. 1989 was not when I met Kristen. It was when the birth of my first child. So all of that has meaning to me. So we get kids thinking about things that are important to them, like their pets or their favorite, you know, cartoon hero or something in that nature. So just an idea. What does Kristen, Nikki, and Mrs. Greenfield think about that? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't know, because the kids struggle with remembering one password that they have for everything at school sometimes, where they'll come into me and say, oh, I forgot my password, and it hasn't changed. It's the same for everything. But so this would be one I'd have to really think about how to work with them on it, because it doesn't make sense to me to come up with an example like that. So I would have to work through it myself first before I could ever share it with kids.
Well, and one to think about is they're not going to use this password. They're just learning to create. And Nikki, if you ever, I would love to pop in like a Zoom meeting or anything like that, and I could teach your kids and you just to show you how I went through this.
Okay.
I've done that a lot because passwords are pretty passionate for me, because it's something all of us have to deal with, and we're not teaching kids by the time they get out of high school how to do this.
Right. Okay.
Just something to think about. There was a chat here. We use birthday and a picture, 6 digits. I don't think there's any right or wrong way. When I was in Oakley, kindergarten, all kids in kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what we did. Easy for the teacher to know what it is. And then first, second, and third grade, it was the same password for every kid. And while that's not a good security, and I understand that, it got them practicing keyboarding skills, and the teacher didn't have to stress about everyone having a different password. So it was just gold 274, capital G, and at the end was like a 1 for first grade, a 2 for second, a third. by the time they got to 4th grade, then they started practicing creating their own passwords. And we used simple things like that at the beginning. And then in 5th grade, we actually started, 4th grade, we taught about how to create the passphrases, but they didn't use them. We were just practicing, and we did that once every month. The teacher got, better at doing it himself. And then in 5th grade, they started using the passwords they created. And the teacher had it written down on a note card so she could help them with it. So it still wasn't, completely private, but that's kind of how they started building it, just as an idea. Oh, those of you that need this, please keep your devices up to date, phones and otherwise. It's the best security measure you could ever have in keeping yourself private. And then, Lori, I don't know if you guys do this with your kids, but every once in a while, I'll tell my teachers, hey, have your kids look at their Google account and check where their last location was at, because this is how, again, keeping yourself private. If you've noticed your device was clear in California, that might be an issue. Like, that might be a concern. So where do we go from here? These are resources I think you as librarians, I gave 2 of them to my librarian, and she's pretty passionate about it. The first one was the DigSit commit. That's where I got the 5 competencies. So if you click on that, you get the 5 competencies, and there's also a book. And then Classcraft has actually made a gamification that they're working on that has game involvement with that. Again, that's probably more at the middle level, but the DigSit commit book was written, started from a student that was 8 years old. So like, he didn't write the book, but his mom did, and all of everything she got came from this kid. And he goes around the world telling his story of how to do digital citizenship in the classroom. And that comes from a kid's standpoint. So I kind of like that. The other one I thought my librarian would really like was the Fact versus Fiction book. And it's written by a librarian. It's called The Crazy Library Lady. And I really like that book because it also comes with a $10 trifold thing that actually inside of it has tons of quizzes that you can do with at different age levels on if you think something is true or not. So that's one of them that I got both of those from Texas, and I think they're very valuable for the librarian. I think Lori, one thing that you talked about was just talking about how to do, copyright and stuff with your students. We also, with my staff and with my students in the middle school, we talk about successful searching, and we scaffold that down at the younger levels. So that's a document that was created by Kim Monk that I think is pretty valuable. The one at the bottom, I think, can be used by any age level, and I love it. It's just a card game. It's called Solve in Time, but that's an actual site you can go to. You could make your own cards, but I went to a training that used it, and it's just being able to solve difficult problems. And in social media and tons of stuff out there could be problems. How to talk nicer to your friends, or how to spread kindness. Whatever the problem is, those cards help break down and get kids working together to solve those problems. And you walk around as the teacher just kind of guiding the effort, and they actually have to produce a product that helps solve their problems. So I love that Solve in Time. That was something else I thought was beneficial for internet security and digital citizenship that you could use within library to maybe play some games or to really think about some of the things that you're wanting to do with classes. And the classroom teachers can take that to their class maybe as ideas to do other things, maybe content areas. And I know a lot of you have seen the Common Sense Media. I think a lot of the teachers I talk to are aware of it, but they're not always aware. If you create a login, you can track if you're using some of the information off that site, like quizzes and stuff. It helps you track that information, and it's built all the way from K to 12, and it breaks it down by grade level and different competencies within those levels. It's also a great way to check on apps that have been vetted out to be safe for students to use. I'm just going to keep going. I did give you some things. If you're in the age level of grade 3 through 5, especially during Digital Citizenship Week. I kind of kicked this off in October of Be Internet Awesome, because it's got a gamification to it. And while it does have lesson plans for teachers to go through, kids also get to play games to reinforce that. And it's been very rewarding for our kids to be able to engage in some of that. And then I even put a primary one on here for maybe Mrs. Greenfield. It's actually low tech. It's just a game board that you can actually have kids engage with. I've seen it all the way down to the kindergarten level. It's just kind of a fun thing to do. And that's kind of my ideas. So I'm going to stop talking because I feel like that's all I've done. Lori, you have any other resources you wanted to share with us?
Hey, I had to turn my video off because, you know, my Wi-Fi out here is the worst. No, I actually, you know, being not as familiar with the younger ages, got a lot of information, so I appreciate that. I was just trying to think if there was anything else, and you may have had that on your last slide there with the Google Applied Digital Skills curriculum. I believe there is a lesson in there in internet safety and digital citizenship. So, did you have a link for that?
I did.
Yeah. And that was the only other one. And I love that Internet Awesome game. That's really fun too. So no, great information. I appreciate it.
I feel like I get a lot of good ideas that I can play with and kind of see what I can incorporate, you know, when we start the year off in the fall.
Time to play.
Yes, definitely.
Arlene? Anybody else have some feedback or anything that you want to add to that? And again, if you see something in there, you're going to see some of my links are just Google Docs that I just threw information in and ideas into. If some of it doesn't make sense to you, or later on, if you're at somewhere else and you find an idea, don't be afraid to add it, because I use that Wakelet a lot just to jump in and see different ideas. So if you come across something, I would really love to have that.
Hey, Dina, did you speak to this? We are really transparent with our students. It seems really introductory, but it's amazing how much that students don't realize, like in any of the Google Suites, just seeing the revision history and the activity dashboard gives so much information about what's happened in a document that gives them some real upfront information. Like if they chose to copy paste a lot of information that wasn't their own, you know, you could obviously tell that was not written and typed by them. So just those two tools are really powerful and game changers in terms of group work and just student ownership of their work.
Did you see, Lori, one of the recent changes they had with, I call it the lightning bolt, that you can see if students have popped in and looked at stuff or not even opened it up?
No, I guess I have more. Is that in classroom or like the apps?
I was shown by our English teacher. I didn't even know this. This was cool. I'll have to show you guys this. So let me get out of presentation mode. So this lightning bolt at the top of all Google Docs so far I found, if you click on it, and so it's shown who's shared with it. Maybe and then let me get one that's actually one of our own.
Oh, that's funny, Dina, because that's the activity dashboard, which I love, but I didn't know that's what the lightning bolt was. I just go to tools, activity dashboard. So nice shortcut.
Well, and then you can see the viewer trend. You can see the comment trend all in one spot. The sharing history, and then the privacy settings, all from this little lightning bolt.
And what I really love about like just the whole Google tweet, and is just that when you give students their assignments through Google Classroom, you have access to their files, even though they haven't submitted it or turned it in. So you can start looking at that before they finish their work and give them some instant feedback. So that's been a game changer for a lot of, working with kids before they've completed the assignment, maybe incorrectly, so you can redirect that way. So it's been great. But yeah, that's good to know. I appreciate that.
You bet. Nikki and Krista and Mrs. Greenfield, that's something you can show your teachers. Are you guys using Google Classroom or Google Docs like that? Krista, you're not unmuted.
Sorry. We don't at the elementary level at this point. But I use Google Docs and slides and all that. So that was a good little tip to know. I did not realize that, just out of curiosity.
Well, and we've been working on documents like this one we've been working with for our kids. We're going to send, our district parents are going to get this, but I started it and then I let some collaborators in on it. But when you're given edit rights, it also gives you other privileges. And I didn't want to just like check mark stuff I didn't want them to have. And so knowing that lightning bolt was super helpful for me, because it was quick for me to check, okay, what's the sharing history? Has it been shared with somebody that I do not think needs to have access, and somebody that I gave access to accidentally gave access to someone else to edit? And I didn't necessarily want them to have that privilege. So I liked that.
So then can you take back who you share that? I mean, you can change that setting then.
Yes. So like I would go into my privacy settings to change that, but I could go into the share settings and see that the class of 2025 teachers can edit, and I could go in there and take that away. I could change it to view only.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I liked that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it until like 3 days ago. I felt stupid. Lori, don't tell anybody.
It's good to be able to share with teachers.
No one is stupid with Google, because as soon as I give a presentation, they'll change something. Like, so that's my disclaimer. Every time I share, it's like, oh, and here we go. So it's all, dynamic and forever changing, which is how it should be.
Absolutely. Anybody else? I didn't say this, but Mrs. Greenfield talked about we use QR codes. I think, when I'm thinking about libraries, so I went to a breakout deal in Mace, and I think the librarian, by the way, put this on, but I was just thinking about digital citizenship. You could create a really super easy, low-tech breakout game in library by using those QR codes to kind of reinforce some of the digital citizenship by using videos. And what she did is she used Flipgrid. I hadn't thought about this, to create her QR codes because they were super easy to create. So she kind of hid the code, the clues around the library in places, so they had to go find it. But then they would find their clue, and it was a QR code. And that QR code would have something in that video, maybe about digital citizenship, or maybe about something just random. And that would lead them to the next code of learning something else. And by the end of it, it was a word code. So she just gave them a little slip of paper that had, clue 1, and it had, like 5 dots underneath it because the word was 5 letters long. And then she would circle one of them, and down at the bottom was an actual word that was made from all of those clues. And so she did have a physical box, but you could buy a box. It didn't have to be the digital breakout box with one lock. And every group got to, go through it. And inside, the reward was a bookmark. She goes, it was high school. She goes, I used to put candy in there, but the kids like smelly bookmarks. And so every kid got a smelly bookmark at the end. She goes, that's like what the reward was. And she goes, that's what my high school kids want. And so that's kind of an idea of how to reinforce digital citizenship in kind of a game like library time, if that makes sense to you. And I could send you her presentation of how she built that. And I took pictures of, it was just a slip of paper, like it was so low tech. And she goes, we did let them use like their Chromebooks, but like every group could only have one. So we didn't have, 25 of them moving around the room because they worked in pairs. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea.
I would love to see that if you don't mind sharing it.
I will. I'll put it into the Wakelet so that you have it.
Great. I'm all about low tech too, because I get freaked out if I try to do too much.
Well, and I think the first time you did it and try to go through the motions, it's going to be a lot. But I think once you do it one time, you're like, oh, I could do this. Because she's like, the first time she did it, it was like the worst thing she'd ever done. Like, it was so hard. But it was just the thinking process of how to get to the next clue and what the rules would be. And she goes, I learned the first time I did it, okay, we're not going to do this one part next time because that didn't work.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Anything else? I just really appreciate you guys and taking the time to kind of think things through, because the more, as you try stuff, you walk away and try stuff and give us some feedback, please share it. Even if it's just a note in that Wakelet of something you tried. And if that doesn't make sense to me, at least I know who to go call to say, hey, can you tell me more about that? I just think the more resources and ideas we have of how to do it within our classroom and not make it the STEM teacher's problem or the computer teacher's problem, but just ways we can incorporate that in our classroom and make it part of what we do.
Thank you, Dina. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you. Lots of great ideas. I appreciate it too.
All right. Well, good luck today with the rest of our virtual camp today and tomorrow. And I look forward to learning with you guys.
Great. Thanks, Dina.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.